Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we are reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 18, Verse 18.
I was going to make a joke like, but we're on 22.
Is everyone open to the verse?
Could you please repeat?
Chapter 18, Verse 18.
Thank you.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Aho Vayam Janma Brito Dhyahasma.
Aho vayam janma brito ashma.
Vridhanu Vrityapi Viloma Jata.
Vidyanu vrityapi viloma jata.
Daushkulyam Adhim Vidhunoti Shigram.
Daskulyamadi vidoti shigram.
Mahatmanam Abhidhana Yogaha.
Mahatmanam Abhidhana Yoga.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Aho Vayam Janma Brito Dhyahasma.
Aho Vayam Janma Brito Dhyasma.
Vridhanu Vrityapi Viloma Jata.
Vridhanuryapi Viloma Jata.
Daushkulyam Adhim Vidhunoti Shigram.
Dashyutralam Adhim Vidhunoti Shigram.
Mahatmanam Abhidhana Yogaha.
Mahatmanam Abhidhana Yoga.
Okay, word for word translation. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Goswami said,
Sutta Goswami said,
Aho,
Aho,
how,
how,
Vayam,
Vayam,
we,
we,
Janma Britaha,
Janma Britaha,
promoted in birth,
promoted in birth,
Adya,
Adya,
today,
today,
Ha,
Ha,
certainly, or
Certainly.
clearly,
Clearly.
Asma,
Asma,
have become,
have become,
Vridha Anuvritya,
Vridha Anuvritya,
by serving those who are advanced in knowledge,
By serving those who advance in knowledge.
Api,
Api,
although,
Although
Viloma Jata,
Viloma Jata,
born in a mixed caste,
born in a mixed caste.
Dashkulyam,
Daskulyam.
disqualification of birth,
Disqualification of birth.
Adhim,
Adyam.
sufferings,
Suffering.
Vidhunoti,
Vidunoti.
purifies,
Purifies.
Shighram,
Shigram.
very soon,
Very soon.
Mahat Tamanam,
Mahatmanam.
of those who are great,
Of those who are great.
Abhidhana,
Abhidhana,
conversation,
Conversation.
Yogaha,
Yogaha,
connection,
connection.
Connection.
translation. Sutta Goswami said, no, you don't need to repeat.
Okay.
Sutta Goswami said, O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower births. Purport. Sutta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed caste, or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association, like Sri Shukadev Goswami and the great rishis of Naimisharanya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed off. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle in pursuance of the Vedic usages, and by his transcendental association he elevated many lowborn, or those disqualified by birth or action, to the status of devotional service, and established them in the position of acharyas, or authorities. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a brahmana or shudra by birth, or a householder or mendicant in the order of society, if he is conversant with the science of Krishna, he can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master. Sutta Goswami learned the science of Krishna from great rishis and authorities like Shukadev and Vyasadeva, and he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisharanya eagerly wanted to hear from him the science of Krishna in the form of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So he had the double association of great souls by hearing and preaching. Transcendental science, or the science of Krishna, has to be learned from the authorities, and when one preaches the science, he becomes still more qualified. So Sutta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus undoubtedly he was completely freed from all disqualifications of lower birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Srila Shukadev Goswami did not refuse to teach Sutta Goswami about the transcendental science, nor did the sages of Naimisharanya refuse to hear lessons from him because of his inferior birth. This means that thousands of years ago there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental science because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in human society became prominent with only 100 years or so, when the number of Dvija Bandhus, or disqualified men in the families of higher castes, increased. Lord Sri Chaitanya revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Thakur Haridas to the position of Namacharya, or the authority in preaching the glories of the holy name of the Lord. Although His Holiness Srila Haridas Thakur was pleased to appear in a family of Mohammedans. Such is the power of pure devotees of the Lord. The Ganges water is accepted as pure, and one can be purified after taking a bath in the waters of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul even by being seen by the lowborn, and what to speak of association. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world. And it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. The mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad-Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. Mahattamanam Abhidhana also means dictionary of great devotees, or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such a dictionary of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are in the Vedas and allied literatures, specifically the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Om Jnana Timarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatardine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sri Sutta Goswami said, O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can, without delay, cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower birth. So in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 11, verse 4, Krishna makes a statement about the nature of the jiva, the spirit soul. And what he says is, O most intelligent Uddhava, the living entity called jiva is part and parcel of me, but due to ignorance he has been suffering in material bondage since time immemorial. By knowledge, however, he can be liberated. And as a side note, when the word he is used in these books, it means everyone. This was written back in the 60s and 70s. That was the convention at the time, to use he for people in general. So Krishna is perfect and complete. Krishna is Om Purnam, as it says in the Sri Isopanishad, the invocation. Om Purnamada Purnamada Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. So Krishna is perfect and complete, and the jiva is also perfect and complete. The jiva is described by Krishna to Uddhava in this verse that I've just read as amsha. That means it was translated in the verse as part and parcel, but amsha actually means limb. So Krishna is saying the living entities, the jivas, are limbs of me. That's a very intimate way of describing the relationship between the pure spirit souls and Krishna. So we can meditate on and relish thinking about this sweet reality that we are the limbs of Krishna, and that because Krishna is perfect and pure and we are emanating from Krishna, then also we are also perfect and pure. But the difficulty is that we jivas have been spending our time in material nature, and we have become bandho svavidyayanadir. We've become bound and afflicted by ignorance. This is not a very good condition to be in, to be bound and afflicted by ignorance. Generally, this is not something that someone would brag about. Oh, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm bound and afflicted by ignorance. Generally, a point that people attempt to overlook, and Krishna facilitates this through his illusory energy, through Maya. Krishna covers over the awareness of the living entity so that we can feel quite satisfied in being bound and afflicted by ignorance. And this condition of being bound and afflicted by ignorance is something that we carry with us lifetime after lifetime, going from one body to another. Krishna says in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata dehantara praptir. He's saying that just as in this lifetime we pure spirit souls are progressing through different bodies. First we have the body of a young child, and then over time that body changes into a youth and then into an adult. So Krishna makes the point that similarly at the time of death, at the end of this body, dehantara, that the soul goes on to take on a new body. What are we doing as we are going from one body to another? So some people would say, some people who have some idea of reincarnation and spirituality, they will make some statements like that, oh, we are taking on these different bodies, going through these different lifetimes in order to learn lessons. Right? This is a very common sentiment you'll hear, especially at like the yoga studios. Say it's all about learning different lessons, but then they can't say what the lessons are. They don't know what the lessons are or what they're trying to learn from the lessons. So, or what the goal of the lessons is. So if one were a student and one came to class every day, and then someone asked, "Oh, what's this class about?" I don't know. Well, what are you supposed to be learning? What kind of a degree are you trying to get? I have no idea. Then you would not think them to be a very good student. So this is the state of those of us who are, again, bound by ignorance. We are going through lifetime after lifetime, but we struggle to ascertain what is it that is the reason why we are here. And because we don't know what the reason for being here is, and we don't know what the ultimate goal of life is, we end up associating ourselves with material nature in so many different ways, so many different iterations of material nature. And by such association, by getting totally caught up in the different experiences of material life, we as pure spirit souls pick up and become covered by so many impressions, so many attachments, and so many reactions of karma. And Krishna talks about this briefly in Bhagavad Gita chapter 15 verse 8. He says, Shriram yad avapnoti yat chapyut kramatishvara grihit vaitani samyati vairgandhan ivashayat. Krishna says, the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So quite the opposite of this conception that we're going from one body another to learn lessons and become better people. Instead, Krishna is explaining that the state of the conditioned soul in the material world is quite the opposite. Krishna is saying we acquire these different conceptions of life and these different conceptions of how we will find satisfaction and what the meaning of life is. And then from one body to another, we are carrying these things with us, just like the air carries aromas. So if the wind is blowing, we experience this in San Francisco all the time, the wind blows over some foul-smelling substance, then the wind carries the aroma of that substance, and everyone in the vicinity becomes afflicted. So this is the nature of our heart, that we have spent our time in so many filthy places of material nature, and because of that association, then we are carrying the obnoxious aromas of these nasty association that we have taken up, and we go from one body to another carrying these impressions with us and thinking that these impressions are the guidelines by which we can find the satisfaction that we are looking for in life. And in this way, again, we are bound and covered up by ignorance. Rather than being able to progress forward in life, we are simply caught in a web of engaging in one action after another, trying to find eternal happiness within the temporary material nature, and thus we are always dissatisfied. So we become dissatisfied, then we think, I'll try something else, and then that just causes us to pick up some different kind of conditioning. Meanwhile, we're being afflicted by all kinds of reactions. So this is the principle behind the birth and death of the soul within this world. We enter into this world with so many kinds of conditioning and desires and impressions, and in the course of engaging in so many material karmic activities, trying to pursue our desires and acting according to the material impressions that we have, we end up with a new body based on our desires, qualities, and karmas. So this does point to the fact that our entry into this world and our entry into a particular type of body and set of conditions is not a random It's not a random thing. This is the other conception that you'll commonly hear in Western society, that the conditions of our life just came upon us randomly. And so, therefore, there's no inherent meaning to life, there's no inherent meaning to the world. Rather, it's just up to you to find what is the meaning according to you, and to find your own enjoyment. And you shouldn't yuck other people's yum. You should allow everyone to engage in whatever variety of happiness they find satisfaction in. But again, this doesn't satisfy the soul, nor does it create a very harmonious condition of the world. You have so many people with clashing interests, and then this causes so many conflicts. And this is something that we can also practically see in this modern world, especially, that there's so many conflicts that come up between different living entities with different kinds of a sense of what is in their best interest. And the sense of what's in their best interest is based on the material condition that they have picked up from this life and previous lives. So, depending on the kind of conditioning and the qualities and the karma of a jiva, when we take on a new birth, we get a particular kind of body to fulfill that. And if someone has committed many sinful activities in their past lives, then they will be born in a materially disadvantaged position. And thus they will experience so many kinds of suffering in their life. So if we can point to some disadvantage of the situation in which we were born, perhaps we were born ugly, or had less opportunity for education, perhaps we were in a financially insecure position from the beginning of our life, perhaps we run into so many troubles since the beginning of our life. So this is an indication of our negative karma from our previous lives, and we're getting the reactions to that. So this is how the science of reincarnation works. Our present body we can take as evidence of our past pious and impious activities. And because, as Krishna says, that one who is freed from all sinful reactions is able to take up his devotional service with determination, therefore there is a sense in which one's previous material actions, one's previous karma, does play a role in one's ability to take up spiritual life in a serious way. And therefore, it is generally said in the context of Vedic knowledge that mainly only Brahmanas can attain liberation. And outside of the science of Bhakti Yoga, this is true. So, as Prabhupada was alluding to in the purport, and I'm simply trying to provide a contrast to the point that Prabhupada is making, for the sake of highlighting the overall point he's making, that Prabhupada said that it is traditionally the system in the Vedas, or especially in modern iterations of the Vedas, that if someone is born in a lower birth, someone is born with the symptoms of past sinful activities, then they are generally considered to have less opportunity for spiritual advancement. And thus, in modern Indian society, this has manifest in those who are not born in the families of Brahmanas, or the priestly intellectual class, that they are often prohibited from engaging in the study of the Vedas, prohibited from engaging seriously in spiritual activities, or from taking initiation from a spiritual master. So this is reflective of of a valid point in one sense, that one's birth does indicate something about the nature of one's consciousness. And depending on the nature of one's consciousness, this determines one's ability to fully take up a culture of knowledge and purity by which one can steadily advance forward in knowledge and spiritual life. However, in Bhakti Yoga, this idea becomes turned on its head slightly, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 verse 32, very famous verse, he says, Mam hiparta vyapashkritya ye pisyu papayonayaha striyo vaishyas tata shudras tepi yanti param gatim. Krishna says, O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, although they may be of lower birth, can still attain the supreme destination. So Krishna is saying that although there is this system of varnashram, there's this system of people being classified according to their birth, and these classifications of birth are the result of one's previous activities. Simply by surrendering to Krishna, simply by actually sincerely taking shelter of Krishna, or taking shelter of Krishna's representative in the form of the spiritual master, in the form of great books like Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is considered the literary incarnation of Krishna, simply by taking shelter of Krishna, all of the considerations of one's past material activities and one's present material activities can be overlooked, simply by sincerely surrendering to Krishna and taking shelter of him. And Krishna reiterates this in many points in the Bhagavad Gita, but especially at the end, Krishna says, Sarva dharman prityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Krishna says, give up all other varieties of religious principles and simply surrender unto me. And if you do this, then I will take you under my protection and you will be freed from all sinful reactions. So there is, in this sense, no disqualification in devotional service based on material situations. And it is a fact that anyone can take to the process of devotional service. And it only depends on the level of one's sincere endeavor what the trajectory of that success will look like. And we hear, growing up in America and probably outside of America, we hear this allegory of the tortoise and the hare, that you have a tortoise and a hare, or a rabbit, and they are going to do a race. And the rabbit is thinking that this tortoise has no opportunity to win this race. And so, being very proud, the rabbit runs forward, so far forward in the race, and then thinks, I'm doing so well in the race that I don't even need to exert myself so much. I can take a break. I can sit under this tree and take a nap. And even by the time that I wake up from my nap, then I can very easily and leisurely reach the finish line before the tortoise. But the tortoise, although very slow, steadily moves along, and then in the end is able to win the race, because the rabbit didn't take seriously forward progression in the race. As a result of the rabbit's superior speed, therefore the rabbit became complacent and egotistical. So this often happens in spiritual life also. Someone may be born in very pious and materially nice circumstances, like in the family of a Brahmana, and then often they become distracted by that, and then they might take longer to really surrender to Guru and Krishna than someone who is born in an impious, materially disadvantaged circumstance. And why is that? Because the person who's materially disadvantaged, they are able to feel how material life is not a place of enjoyment. They can really feel motivated to steadily engage in devotional service. They have that pressure from material nature to move forward. Whereas someone who is engaged in pious activities in their previous life, the result of these pious activities is material enjoyment. And material enjoyment is more often than not distracting to the conditioned soul. It distracts us from spiritual life. So therefore, on the spiritual level, someone who is materially disadvantaged, they might actually be quite spiritually advantaged. And this point comes up in the pastime of Narada Muni encountering the demigods Nalakuvara and Manigriva, as we were listening to in the car on the way back from Los Angeles on Sunday, that these two demigods, they were very wealthy. They were born in all kinds of materially advantaged circumstances. And so they used that situation in order to be completely distracted from spiritual life, to such an extent that they were spending time naked in a river with naked women. They were having a great time. And then the great sage Narada Muni comes by, and the Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they couldn't even comprehend that they were naked, nor could they comprehend that they were in front of a great sage. They were so intoxicated that they couldn't comprehend the situation that was upon them. And so Narada Muni thought to himself that because these demigods are so materially well off, they are not able to appreciate the association of great devotees. But Narada Muni explains that a poor person naturally is able to control their senses because they don't have the facilities to engage in or over-engage in material activities. So naturally their senses are under control. Naturally they feel satisfied with whatever comes to them in material life. And a poor person is easily able to accept a saintly person into their home and thus benefit from the saintly person's association. So this is the real point that is being made by Sutta Goswami in this verse. Sutta Goswami was born in a materially disadvantaged situation, but regardless of material circumstances, if one can take full advantage of the association of saintly people and hear from them, then success is guaranteed very quickly. One can very quickly be purified of all the impious conditions that one has carried from one life to the next. And this point is echoed also in Srimad-Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 18, verse 11, where it says, Yat Sangha Labdham Nijavirya Vaibhavam Tirtham Muhu Samsprishatam Himanasam Haratya Jonta Shrutibhir Gaton Gajam Ko Vaina Seveta Mukunda Vikramam. This means by associating with persons for whom the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mukunda, is the all-in-all, one can hear of his powerful activities and soon come to understand them. The activities of Mukunda are so potent that simply by hearing of them, one immediately associates with the Lord. For a person who constantly and very eagerly hears narrations of the Lord's powerful activities, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, in the form of sound vibrations, enters within his heart and cleanses it of all contamination. On the other hand, although bathing in the Ganges diminishes bodily contaminations and infections, this process, and the process of visiting holy places, can cleanse the heart only after a long time. Therefore, who is the sane man who will not associate with devotees to quickly perfect his life? So, in judging who is a saintly person, one should not base one's judgment on any material considerations. One should not base one's judgment on age or gender, beauty or ugliness, rich or poor. We should simply judge the quality of the devotee's surrender to and love for Guru and Krishna. And this is the metric by which we can understand who is actually a saintly person. Srila Rupa Goswami emphasizes this point in Nectar of Instruction, verse 6, where he says, being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body born in a low family, a body born with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. So, one who is actually serious about spiritual life should find any opportunity to hear from and get guidance from a sincere, saintly person who has sincerely dedicated his or her life to Krishna and to sharing spiritual knowledge with others. One should not consider, is this person young? Is this person old? Is this person male or female? One should simply consider what is the nature of their spiritual realization. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught this principle and demonstrated it both personally and through his pure devotees in so many ways. And particularly, we find the verse which was spoken to Sri Ramananda Roy, that Lord Chaitanya says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Keni Noy, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoy. This means that whether one is a Brahmana or whether one is a sannyasi or a renunciate, or whether one is born in a low family, none of these should be taken into consideration. We can also expand this into whether one is male or female, whether one is young or old, whether one is beautiful or ugly. One should not take these points into consideration when judging the devotee. And then Lord Chaitanya says, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, Se Guru Hoy. If someone, regardless of their material position, is conversant in and realized in the science of Krishna and is capable of sharing that with others, such a person is a spiritual master, regardless of any material situation. So this is a very essential point of the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which have been carried down to us in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. If we try to take any other sorts of teachings or religious principles as more prominent than what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught through his personal teachings and example and through his the demonstrations of his pure associates, if we take any other considerations as being more prominent, then we should know that we are simply misguiding ourselves and misguiding others. And unfortunately, this is at times a common principle. But we should make sure that we are becoming conversant in and we are understanding and always reminding ourselves of the essential principles that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. And this is exactly why Srila Prabhupada came from India to the West, to bless us with the knowledge of Krishna, Gauravani Pracharine. He came to give the teachings of Gauranga and no one else. And if you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, then you will see practically how everything that Srila Prabhupada teaches in his books is a direct manifestation of and application of the teachings and example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if you really want to appreciate Srila Prabhupada, his pranam mantra, it was written by him because his disciples were not qualified to compose a pranam mantra in the early days of ISKCON. So how did Prabhupada describe himself? Of the three major points that Prabhupada pointed out about himself, he said, Namaste Saraswati Deve. He's the servant of his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Gauravani Pracharine, that he's come to share the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine. He's coming to the West to vanquish the impersonalistic and voidistic philosophies and establish a relationship with Krishna within the heart of all living entities. So if we want to understand and appreciate Prabhupada, then studying and appreciating the teachings and example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very conducive to that. If one does not know about the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, then you can say Gauravani Pracharine, but you will have no idea what that means. So we should take advantage of Srila Prabhupada giving us the opportunity to familiarize ourselves with the teachings and example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one, as Prabhupada said in the purport, one of the most prominent features of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities is that he completely discounted all material considerations when judging who is a proper devotee and who is not. There are so many examples of great devotees who Lord Chaitanya, who Krishna arranged for them to be born in by external vision, disadvantaged positions. For instance, Srila Prabhupada mentioned Haridas Thakur. He's the Namacharya. He was the one who taught and demonstrated the highest glories of chanting Hare Krishna. And yet, he wasn't even born in a family that followed the Vedic system. He was born in a family that was antagonistic to the knowledge of the Vedas. And yet, it was through Haridas Thakur that Lord Chaitanya demonstrated the highest limits of chanting the holy names, which is the Yuga Dharma of this age of Kali. The Yuga Dharma, that means the most prominent religious activity in this age is to chant the holy names of Krishna. So of all people for Krishna to demonstrate this through, it was someone who by ordinary vision one would completely discredit. These people who are proposing so many ideas about who can be guru, I can only imagine that they would completely discredit Haridas Thakur if he was in our modern days. Because based on external vision, that's how it seems. But for someone who's able to see with internal vision, with spiritual vision, then such a person could recognize the glories of Haridas Thakur. And I will end with one final example of a great devotee who demonstrated that spiritual attainment is not bound to material circumstances, and that one should not judge a great saintly person based on their material circumstances. And this great saintly person was Ramananda Roy. He was one of two most intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya, especially in Lord Chaitanya's last years, in which Lord Chaitanya was spending his time at night in the Gambhira, and he was experiencing the highest levels of ecstatic love for Krishna. Then his two most intimate associates were Ramananda Roy and Svarup Damodar. So Ramananda Roy, by external vision, he was born in a Shudra family. He was born in the laborer class. This is by ordinary vision, the lowest rung of the Varnashram system. And yet, Ramananda Roy, from the beginning of his life and throughout his life, was completely absorbed in ecstatic love for Krishna. And so, although others were not able to immediately recognize the glories of Ramananda Roy and the glories of his level of love for Krishna, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Ramananda Roy during his tour in South India, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually had Ramananda Roy teach him. It wasn't that Lord Chaitanya gave instructions to Ramananda Roy. Rather, Ramananda Roy gave instructions to Lord Chaitanya. And then later, Ramananda Roy moved to Nilachala, to Jagannath Puri, where Lord Chaitanya spent the last 12 years of his activities. And during that time, one great scholarly person named Pradyumna Mishra arrived in Puri and wanted to take instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction to Pradyumna Mishra was, if you actually want to know about Krishna and about how to engage in the science of devotional service, then you should go and talk to Ramananda Roy. And by such talks, Pradyumna Mishra saw how glorious Ramananda Roy was. They met early in the morning, and Ramananda Roy was so enwrapped in talking about Krishna, so full of love in his talks about Krishna, and he emanated this love to Pradyumna Mishra, who also became completely absorbed in hearing such Krishna Katha, such talks about Krishna, that although they started early in the morning, by very late at night, they were still continuing to talk. And they had no concept of the fact that it had gone from early morning all the way to late at night. And actually, one of Ramananda Roy's servants had to come and inform them that, it's very, very late at night now. You guys should go to sleep. They had no concept of going to sleep. We see this in the 6 Goswamis as well, that they would speak all day and night about Krishna amongst each other, and thus they would often forget the idea of sleeping, forget the idea of eating. They lived a very austere life, not because they were absorbed in the desire for austerity, but because their love for Krishna and their absorption in thinking and talking about Krishna completely overrided any other considerations. And so they were naturally neglectful of their material so-called needs and were instead completely absorbed in their spiritual activities. So this was the nature of Ramananda Roy. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives a summary of this pastime. This is in Antya Leela chapter 5, verse 82 to 89. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, knows very well how to demonstrate the qualities of his devotees. Therefore, acting like an artistic painter, he does so in various ways and considers this his personal profit. There is yet another characteristic of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. O devotees, listen carefully to how he manifests his opulence and characteristics, although they are exceptionally deep." So we're all listening carefully. "To vanquish the false pride of so-called renunciates and learned scholars, he spreads real religious principles, even through a Shudra or low-born fourth-class man. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached about devotional service, ecstatic love, and the absolute truth by making Ramananda Roy, a grihasta born in a low family, the speaker. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, the exalted Brahmana sannyasi, and Pradyumna Mishra, the purified Brahmana, both became the hearers of Ramananda Roy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited the glories of the holy name through Haridas Thakur, who was born in a Muslim family. Similarly, he exhibited the essence of devotional service through Sanatana Goswami, who had practically been converted into a Muslim. Although the Lord fully exhibited the ecstatic love and transcendental pastime, the Lord fully exhibited the ecstatic love and transcendental pastimes of Vrindavan through Srila Rupa Goswami. Considering this, who can understand the deep plans of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are just like an ocean of nectar. Even a drop of this ocean can inundate all the three worlds. O devotees, relish daily the nectar of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for by doing so one can merge in transcendental bliss and attain full knowledge of devotional service. So any questions or comments or complaints or realizations or reflections?
I have two things written down. Well, initially I wrote down, how come celebrities are born beautiful and saintly people, it's not necessarily the case, and then you explained it perfectly, like right after. So I'm glad I don't have to ask that question. And it actually made me reflect on how I appreciate that in this philosophy, like there's, things that people, like we all think about, and then have questions about, like for example, with the Bhagavad Gita, someone had the question of like, if God exists, why is there suffering? Like the classic question, or why is there like child suffering, like unfair suffering? And then after he got the answer, he was talking to me after, and he was like, oh wow, it's just that like, there's like this platform of understanding, and then there's like this platform of understanding. And on this platform, you don't necessarily see suffering or pleasure the same way. So I kind of feel the same way here. Like I'm so conditionally situated that I think, beautiful, not beautiful, or like rich or poor. But I think your talk, like once I'm in it, it's like, oh wait, there's just a platform that is just way higher than that. So then it started like stops mattering. So I appreciate when I have that feeling of like, oh, it's just that it doesn't matter. But a question I had from earlier when you were talking about kind of how people say karma is like you just learn lessons, but actually it's that we carry the sort of material association. Then the question I wrote down was, then why do we go from lower forms to higher forms than vice versa? Like I feel like
yeah, I mean, oh, you mean like, why don't we just stay on the same platform?
No, like then if we come sort of the most pure selves, if once we come to the material world in a way we're the most pure, because we haven't been through all the cycle of all the material association. So then why isn't it the opposite? Like why don't we come in the best form that we can leave, versus we have to go through the
Yeah, well, it is sometimes said that the first birth that a conditioned soul takes is as Brahma, which is the purest form of existence that one can have in material life. Brahma is pure intelligence. He doesn't have any other level of subtle body or physical body. And he personally sees Krishna all throughout his day and all the different avatars. So we get the opportunity, if we take that as the case, we get the opportunity to pull ourselves out of material life. But the difficulty is that material nature has an inherently corrupting effect on the soul. So even though we are pure spirit souls, because our understanding of the fact that we are pure spirit souls is covered over, we're thinking that material life is what we need in order to feel satisfied. And that's facilitated by the material energy alluring us with so many different engagements. And as we are taking up these different engagements and then feeling dissatisfied by the results that we get from these engagements, then say, okay, well, then I have to try this other thing and this other thing. And in this way, we just end up associating with so many different combinations of material nature that we become completely covered over. And this level of covering over may wax and wane depending on the activities that we engage in materially. But until we fully take shelter of Krishna, we have no protection from the material energy. And so therefore all possibilities of elevation or degradation are there for us as conditioned souls. So this is a point that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, that even being in the materially highest level is not it's not a steady platform of existence. And we see this in so many of the demigods that, well, for instance, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they had all opportunity. They were the sons of the treasurer of the demigods, Kuvera. And so all of the demigods, they have a pious background and they see Krishna and Krishna's activities. But Nalakuvara and Manigriva were still carried away by material energy. So there's countless examples in Bhagavatam of this. So this is why we have to take shelter of Krishna if we want to actually be protected. There's no protection in the material world. It's all uncertainty of what can happen to us. I don't know if that answers your question very well.
No, then it does. Like by lower forms, I kind of meant ants and bugs but yeah, if the first birth you take is Brahma, then it is the case that you go from higher to lower births rather than lower. Like I just imagine if you're kind of your pure set self as the kind of the first time around, and you're like an ant. It's probably very frustrating to be like, I want to worship Krishna. You still have some, or maybe you have less contamination. But so if you are the first birth you take is as Brahma, then yeah, I would probably have pretty good odds.
Yeah.
So we take birth as Brahma first when we separate from Krishna, and then because of the conditional mind, we degrade ourselves in lower birth, and then we try to keep reminding ourselves about Krishna. Is that?
Well, in material life, we're trying to not remind ourselves of Krishna. Right? And Krishna facilitates this through his material energy. As Maya means the covering potency. So the only way that we can enjoy in this material world is if our knowledge is covered over. Krishna facilitates this. As long as we have the desire to enjoy, then Krishna gives us the opportunity by covering over our knowledge of him.
So what about reincarnation, I just want to share what I had heard before this class. So there are like 4 different type of living beings, right? The one in the land, the one like the animals, human, and then there is trees, plants, and then there is the sea life. So once you complete all the sea life and once you become the conch, then your sea life is completed. And when you become all the plants and once you become tulasi, then your plant life is completed. And when you become all the animal and when you become cow, your animal life is completed. And when you become all form of human beings, poor, rich, all that. And when you become devotee, your human life will be completed as well. So that was my understanding. But about the Brahma thing, I have a follow-up question. So when we separate from, since we are part and parcel of Krishna, when we separate from Krishna, first we are Brahma, we take a birth as a Brahmin family.
No, Brahma isn't the creator of the universe. Yeah, so not a human, a demigod. But this is just one explanation. I don't know that it's a universal principle, but this is how it's sometimes explained.
Probably too. Yeah, I guess I'm confused from when you go, or yeah, I'm confused when you go from Brahma to a fish. Like, or is it a universal thing that everyone goes through the same cycle of life forms?
No. Depending on the karma that one gets oneself involved in, that determines one's birth. So generally it is said that conditioned souls have gone through all the different species of life, because we've been enwrapped in material conditioning since time immemorial. There's like practically you could say that there's an infinite number of lives that all of us have lived in this material world. Practically speaking, in the sense that it's incalculable how many. And so over the course of this, one could generally say that all different life forms have been covered by each of us. But once one goes into a particular life form, then there is a steady progression of births that one ends up in. So it's like there's, like a conveyor belt. You can jump onto the conveyor belt at any point that you want to. But then once you're on the conveyor belt, then there's one path that you're going. So that's how reincarnation is. So if you take birth as a fish, then you're going to move forward from that fish point. And then you would be like a plant, and then an animal, and then human being. If you are in the next life, you're born as a cow, then you don't have to go through all the other animal life forms. You can just immediately become a human in your next life. So yeah, depending on the level of karmic involvement that you get involved in, one's journey back to the human form of life might be shorter or quicker. And also one can stay in the human form of life, but one has to engage in pious activities in order to do that. And we can see practically that in modern times, people aren't very inclined to engage in pious activities. All right. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.